Hi kids, my name is Mr. Mortland. I'm also called Mr. M by many kindergartners and first graders. I am a substitute teacher down in the San Diego area, but I'm also good friends with your teacher, Mrs. Morley. And how do I know her? She and my wife grew up together many years ago. And when I met my wife and got married, I got to know your teacher. And Mrs. Morley and I, again, have been friends for many, many years. She's been following my journey into teaching, and I'm loving it. And I'm also enjoying doing these video recordings of stories for the students that I've gotten to know at all the different schools at which I teach. So here we go. Here's the first story I get to share with you. I hope you enjoy it. You know, I picked a book that my children had when they were young called The Book of Virtues. And it's got a lot of great fables in it with some real neat, meaningful stories. And I picked a special one for you all today called Boris, Natasha, and the Giant Beet. Here we go. Natasha and her husband Boris loved beets. They ate beets for breakfast, for lunch and dinner, and even for late night snacks. The two ostriches loved beets and more beets. One day they saw an advertisement in a gardening magazine. "Look at this, Boris," Natasha said to her husband. "There is a seed that will produce the largest and sweetest beet imaginable." "Let's get it," Boris cried. When the seed arrived, the husband and wife planted it carefully in their garden. As promised, the beet did grow bigger than any they had ever planted. "My gosh, wife," Boris shouted as he looked at the flourishing vegetable. "This is the largest beet I've ever seen," Natasha said. "My mouth is watering already." By the end of the spring, the beet took up nearly half the garden. By summer, it had grown even bigger. By autumn, Natasha decided that the beet was ready to harvest. She went to the garden to pull it from the ground. She pulled and pulled, but the beet wouldn't come loose. It was so big that it just sat there, plump, juicy, mouth-watering, but very stubborn. Then Boris tried to pull out the beet, but he had no more success than his wife. So they went to the garden together. Boris clutched the huge vegetable, and Natasha held on to her husband. They yanked and they pulled, but nothing happened. "This beet is laughing at us," Boris said, so they called their dog. "Woody, would you come help us pull the stubborn beet from the ground?" Natasha asked the St. Bernard. "Of course," Woody agreed. So Woody grabbed Natasha, who grabbed Boris, and the three of them pulled together. But the beet would not move. "This beet is still laughing at us," Natasha complained. She called Petrova. "Would you please help us pull the beet from the ground?" she asked her furry pussycat. Petrova consented. So Petrova held on to Woody, who held on to Natasha, who held on to Boris, and they all pulled. But the beet still would not move. "We'll never pull this beet from the ground," Woody growled in his grumbly voice. "How will we ever enjoy this scrumptious beet?" Petrova wanted to know. Just then Stanislaus, the gerbil from next door, came along. "We're having a problem," Petrova explained. "Would you please help us?" "Do you really think that someone so small can make a difference?" Natasha wondered. "I don't know how much help I will be," the gerbil said, "but I'm willing to give it a try." So Stanislaus grabbed Petrova, who grabbed Woody, who grabbed Natasha, who grabbed Boris. They pulled with all their might. "Ugh," they cried. They pulled again. "Oomph," they moaned. Suddenly, the beet came out with a whoosh. Boris and Natasha and Woody and Petrova and Stanislaus all got up from where they had fallen. It was the largest, most fabulous, most wondrous beet anyone had ever seen. There was a feast that night. The family ate boiled beets and fried beets and mashed beets and drank juice made from crushed beets. But best of all, they enjoyed borscht, a sweet red soup made with beets, sour cream, and green onions. For days after, they ate the borscht, both hot and cold. They sat at the table telling tales of the sweetest, most delectable vegetable anyone had ever eaten. They spoke with smiles on their faces, faces stained red from the juice of one giant beet. That was great. See you next time.